Hello and welcome everybody to the first live panel of the Business Insider Festival, where we'll be talking today about the impacts of the COVID pandemic on e-commerce. My name is Philipp Peitsch. I am the co-CEO of the price comparison service idealo.de, and I'm blessed with three awesome panelists today who represent very distinct and different aspects of e-commerce. Alexa, Tarek, and Thomas, please introduce yourselves briefly to the audience. Alexa, maybe starting with you.
Sure. My name is Alexa from Bismarck. I'm the country manager for Adyen in Germany. Adyen is a global payments platform. We help merchants accept payments everywhere in the world across all channels, and we do this via a single platform, which allows us to increase conversion and as such revenue for our merchants.
Thank you very much. Tarek.
Yeah, I'm Tarek, co-founder of About You. About You is the second largest fashion online shop in continental Europe. I founded the company together with three colleagues 6.5 years ago. By now, we're active in 21 countries, doing roughly 3 billion in gross merchandise volume this year, and yeah, still heavily expanding, obviously.
Perfect, thank you. And last but not least, Thomas.
I am Thomas, CEO of Vinted. Vinted is a second-hand fashion marketplace where people C2C trade with each other, all types of fashion and apparel. And it's an international platform connecting many countries together. So people can, for example, from Brussels buy a dress from Barcelona. And we make this possible by making a fully transactional second-hand marketplace for people.
Thank you. And maybe to add, Vinted is probably best known, at least in Germany, through Kleiderkreisel and Mami Kreisel, two of Vinted's biggest websites. Okay, so COVID has obviously had a huge impact on e-commerce. From my perspective, I've seen sort of two main ways to react to it. One is to be very cautious, probably the majority of players, and one is to be very aggressive. Immediately, Amazon, we're just going to hire another 100,000 workers, comes to mind. So my first question to you is, how had the first wave of Corona impacted your business and how did you react to that? And Tarek, maybe to start with you, what happened at About You and what did you do?
Yeah, maybe to start with a view on the market. So the fashion market has massively decreased with the beginning of pandemic. The total market basically crashed by more than 50%. Luckily, the online share of within that market has massively increased. And in total, we saw that there was basically a stagnation or a small growth in the online fashion sector, which is good news, obviously, because offliners have massively suffered. But what has changed even more was the demand. So we saw that demand in certain categories like evening dresses, basically everything you wear when going out, has obviously massively dropped. Nobody was buying evening dresses anymore, but sports, kids and leisure wear, homeware basically has massively increased. So we not just saw that the market was fluctuating a lot, but we saw that there was a massive shift in what were people actually demanding, which channels did they use, where were they spending their time. So for us, that meant we had to adapt our replenishment, our offer on the website, the sorting of the categories, pricing, and obviously also our marketing activities within days. And luckily, as at About You, most of the stuff is automated and technology driven. That could happen quite fast because it was done basically by algorithms and machines. But still, this was a huge challenge for us.
Yeah. Was it, I assume, so traffic you said was up a little bit. Was it more difficult for you to get inventory?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, we had an overstock on certain categories like evening dresses, and we had an understock on several other categories. So this was also kind of a race between the online or retailers in general. So who was basically the first calling the supplier saying, hey, I need more jogging pants, for example. Yeah. And since in our case, most of the replenishment was done automatically, we were often the first ones or within the first reordering those categories that were heavily demanded by our customers. And therefore, we had no undersupply basically in the stuff that was demanded fast. But on the other hand, we had to get rid of our overstock in evening dresses and other categories that were heavily influenced by Corona. And that could be done by, aggressive pricing, going into discounts much earlier than the competition. And that, therefore, actually, in our case, we managed to grow quite well. We were cash flow positive within the last 9 months during the pandemic and managed to grow by more than 70%. which looking on our competition was way better than the market or basically all of our competitors. They were either not growing or losing a lot of money. We managed to grow and be cash flow positive. But I think stock and replenishment, etc., was just one factor. The other was definitely marketing. So we observed kind of what is the change in media behavior. People were using social media much more. People were using television much more. They were not out. So billboard and outdoor advertisement, for example, was basically useless. So we tried to do a lot of activities within social media. We were one of the first ones selling community masks. We did this at self-cost and did a huge marketing campaign around that and gained millions of new customers by that. So we basically did a lot in social media and guerrilla marketing campaigns, etc., to basically take advantage of the change of media behavior while basically trying to cut our losses on the stock that was not demanded anymore.
Yeah. Impressive. I'm not surprised you did well, but 70% is impressive. Congratulations. Thomas, how about you? I suppose inventory wasn't such a challenge for you, but I guess shipping probably was more difficult, was it?
Yeah, so we have massive volumes of shipping, which is we are the lion's shares of C2C shipping in our countries. And so for us, it was a different situation, especially in France and Spain. We saw that during Corona, a lot of disruption was there. And we work with a model where people ship to a shop and then pick it up. So it's a drop-off, pick-up shipping. So we took a very controversial decision to stop activities. So we said, okay, everybody is in panic. And we kind of know packaging are not infecting, but many people standing in rows in front of shops that are essential food shops. We thought it was ethically not correct to stay open. So we closed our business and stopped shipping, brought 2 weeks later a reservation mode live so people could keep reserving. And then we discussed with the government that, this is the right time, you can go live again. And we went live again and we saw that actually our traffic bounced back. So this cost, enormous amounts of revenue and cost. And during that period, we said to all hiring, let's only hire now at the necessary gaps that we have. And as soon as we see that it bounces back, then we continue our aggressive growth strategy. And after a couple of weeks, let's say roughly a month, we saw everything is back, everything is on green, and we started to invest again. And we had very light marketing and didn't do any initiatives. The thing that we did is that we said okay, we don't want to massively benefit from this horrific situation, and we donated 1 million euros to several research institutes to help the community. And then on the people side, we very early brought everybody to their houses and ensured that they worked well. So we took kind of a long-term approach. We said we're going to take care of our community first, and that means people over profit. And then when we think we are in the right place, we do an extra donation. And we take good care of our providers and working very closely with them to make sure that they're not overloaded and that they can do their job safely. And I think that long term, that signal to our community was something that created, let's say, that reinforced the message that we want to take care of them, and thus they easily came back. And I think it's kind of obvious to mention that we are benefiting enormously of this. People have less money. They're more at home. We give a service that they can live more sustainable, spend more efficiently on fashion, and save some cash and make some cash. So for us, we were just on our toes to not hurt the community, and are now back to scaling as fast as we can.
Cool. So I understand that sustainability has not suffered because of Corona, because that was one thing in my mind that maybe people are less focused on sustainability now and more focused on, getting new white T-shirts back into their homes.
I think if you look at there are two types of sustainability, right? We have people who produce new stuff and try to do that most sustainable, and then usually that's a little bit more expensive. And I think that's suffering because it's a more expensive option. What we're doing is a cheaper option to be more sustainable, and that's not suffering, that's accelerating. Mm-hmm. So I think the movement of sustainability is as strong or even stronger, yet people are in a situation that they're saving their money and they're carefully because the outlook on the future is not so certain, and thus options like us are growing faster and the other options are suffering a bit.
Understand. Cool. Alexa, I assume your business has also been growing, but probably a little less rocketed than ours, because inventory is not a thing for you, shipping is not a thing for you. You basically provide a constant service, which is why my question to you is: you have much more overview on the market than we have, where we've seen our perspective is kind of limited, and you see the whole of e-commerce and even other markets that you cater for. What are your observations? What has moved into what direction? What has suffered? What has grown? And how does e-commerce hold its water?
Well, it was quite interesting actually to see beginning of this year. We first saw APAC under lockdown, sort of, and then it moved over to Europe and it ended up in the US. But if you then drill down into the different verticals, you could see that travel, for example, came more or less to a standstill. Obviously, for those retailers who only serve brick and mortar stores, they also didn't see any traffic at all. On the other hand, we saw a lot of increase in e-commerce, not only in retailers, but also in streaming, communications, gaming, gambling, those sort of merchants. Obviously, all benefited from more people being at home. I think the number which I found most interesting is that those merchants who provide a unified commerce experience, meaning they serve brick and mortar, mobile and e-commerce shops, 50% of those that we have on the platform didn't see any change in revenue. So the shopper still wanted to shop, they just moved to other channels. And I think that's very promising also for the future to say, it doesn't really matter which channel I'm serving, as long as I can offer anything the shopper wants on that right channel and give them the same experience. So that was quite cool. I think for us, operationally, to that question, what did we do? I think we were very involved in making sure our merchants can refund money. So Get Your Guide, for example, a travel merchant, they wanted to make sure they keep the trust of their shoppers. So we made sure they refund everything. They communicated this properly. We also saw a lot of merchants that only had shops offline. They moved to online super fast. So really interesting to see how flexible merchants could be. And they set up things like pay by link, for example, where you send out an email to your shopper and they can just pay by email or pay on a payment page that is sent to them via email. So all these new initiatives that we've actually been preaching for a long time, they accelerated. So I think that's in the long run, definitely something that's quite positive.
So do you, if I can ask you a little more about the whole retail situation, because my feeling is a little bit, there's a new spirit. So offline retailers do look at online now, but to me, it still doesn't feel like a huge wave. It is happening somehow, but now that Corona has gone away a little bit, people are, of course, again, focused more on their retail business. Is it really happening right now, or do you also see it's more or less, it's a beginning, but there is a much bigger shift yet to come?
Well, I do think that if you look at all of the world or Europe, Germans are quite slow, right? I think the change, we're not very fond of change. We like our cash, we like all these things. But for example, 39% of Germans who used to pay with cash now want to pay with a card-based or wallet-based payment method. And I think that also shows is the shopper demanding it, and retailers have to follow those demands, because otherwise, we all are used to shopping online. We all are used to the one-click experience where things are shipped at home super fast, and we want to have the same thing offline. And I also think it's really important now with Q4 coming up, all these significant days of Cyber Monday, Black Friday, Chinese Singles Day, even if you want to call it that for Europe. You do know that as an offline retailer, you have to make sure that your shoppers know what actions you're going to take to make it safe. So you have to make sure that shoppers know they can pay contactless, that there are no queues, and all these things we see drive a lot of change in the industry. And while there's still a lot to do, we think that it has accelerated it quite strongly. Yeah. So we are really, really busy in supporting this move.
I can understand that. Before I use your segue to Q4, one more question. If you look at e-commerce as a whole, do you have something like a growth number during Corona?
Yeah, there's actually been a study that I read where it says like 25% of shoppers have spent more money online, and 22 of those planned to keep doing that after the pandemic. But at the same time, 59% actually looking forward to going back to shopping offline as well. So there's not only one channel. We have to make sure retailers offer all the services on our channels.
Thank you. Now I use the segue to Q4 because that is on my mind a lot. What's going to happen in Q4? So personally, I think the prospect of standing with loads of people in a crowded shopping mall doing your Christmas shopping while wearing a mask is not super sexy. And I'm also starting to advise friends to buy Christmas presents early because I do see inventory shortages maybe coming our way if I look at e-commerce. Maybe quick, Tarek, you're the most regular e-commerce guy of us. What is your view on that?
I mean, for fashion, Christmas is not such a relevant. Basically, fashion is usually not a Christmas present. So the Christmas business is not as present as for, selling electronics or basically selling any other stuff, I think for the typical Christmas present, I'm totally with you. I guess, we will have a shortage in stock for the onliners. And on top, we're going to have we're going to run in a huge problem when it comes to shipping and logistics, especially on the carrier side. Yeah. If you look on Germany with DHL and Hermes, but actually we are in 21 countries. It's really true for most of the carriers. From what I see, they are not at all prepared to that. So they saw Christmas-like peaks in beginning of Corona. But I mean, what they will see now to Black Friday and during Christmas season it will not be Christmas and Black Friday like. Yeah. So they knew how to handle the peaks we saw in the early pandemic because it reminded them on Christmas and Black Friday. But what happens if Christmas and Black Friday are up, I don't know, 30%? So this will be very interesting. But I think it's a good thing, this year, in general, from a market perspective, this year, from a customer perspective, I would also recommend buying Christmas stuff early because I'm pretty sure we'll run into problems in the peak times. But it will, it is kind of a stress test for the outbound logistics for what would be coming in 5 to 10 years, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of city logistics and everything, basically. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of a load test. Obviously on the back of customer experience, so that's not so cool for the customer, but in general, I think it will leapfrog the market. I'm with Alexa, my feeling is, we saw a leapfrog in online penetration of, 5 to 10 years in advance. I'm pretty sure after Corona, it will not stay at this level, but it won't drop to the level we saw pre-Corona. So it will definitely boost online shopping. And it's at the same time a stress test for all the infrastructure in terms of technology and logistics. And in general, I think we will see a massive development, or it will accelerate the development in e-commerce and in infrastructure. For fashion, not so much. As said, fashion is not a Corona winner, so to say. But as a whole e-commerce market, I would see this.
Yeah. Thank you. Alexa, I'm sure you're doing sort of math on how big you think Q4 is going to be. My best guess for Black Friday this year is going to be 50 to 100% over last year's Black Friday, because you have like a Corona level and then you have a growth of Black Friday, and the two, maybe they don't add up one plus one, but they add up in a certain way. What do you think? How big is Q4 going to be?
It's very hard to say because we're such an international company that I can't make any predictions. But the study that I quoted, merchants should expect 20% of new Black Friday and Cyber Monday shoppers. So they're actually shoppers who haven't made use of this before. And I think that's something to really take note of and say, how can I make sure I reach those shoppers? How can I make sure they get a good experience if they're using it for the first time? And how can I communicate well enough? What's in stock, what's safe, how can I make sure that I really make sure I feel them they feel welcome, and how can I make sure that I turn those into loyal customers? I think that's the way forward, right? Make sure that you understand those shoppers that are coming your way for the next quarter. Yeah.
Okay, so if we start to look a bit further than Q4, so 2021 and the following, I'd be really curious, how do you look at the post-Corona future for e-commerce, and how do you prepare for it? And maybe Thomas, to start with you, you said already that you see the sustainability trend is definitely not broken, and that you can help cater, for probably the not so good economic situation a lot of people will find themselves in. But if you look at the next years, what is your take on that? What do you think you'll have to do in order to make Vinted continuously successful?
So I think practically what Tarek said, we're now living in a time that in months, let's say years, are passing by. And I think that will continue. And I think what Tarek also mentioned, that the logistics side, which is, let's say, the slowest part in scaling, that gets a boost. So I hope to see that those logistic companies really have enough bravery to invest deeply to accelerate that. And I think what it means for Vinted is that we practically can accelerate and continue our expansion within markets and outside into new markets. And that for us, it's kind of an acceleration of our playbook because it practically became easier for us. And I think for everybody now in e-commerce, we just had an easier period. And therefore, we should practically rewrite our strategies to accelerate what we're doing. And for us, that means going deeper and faster into everything that we were already doing. So I think it's a trend that stays and it's not a blip. So yes, people will go back to offline shopping as well. But the models that we're building, they're replacing offline, and that replacement is just, I just only see it that it's staying.
Yeah. I'm glad you're active and positive about it, because interestingly, one thing that really puzzled me during Corona, when you spoke to particularly some of the larger e-commerce companies, you were getting a lot like, we're not so keen on actually doing something because all our targets are already met. So it's it's nice to see that this is not enough for you.
No, I think if you're a lazy corporate structure, you can go on holiday and tell your boss you had your targets.
Yeah.
I guess none of us in this room are wired this way. So yeah, I pray for the shareholders of people who see it that way. So it's like, good luck with that team.
Yeah, I do very much agree with you. Alexa, what do you see, how it's going? So you're saying retail is getting into the online world. Online obviously has gained a lot and knows how online works, basically. What is your prediction for the future, for the retailing, for the merging maybe of retail and e-commerce, and what will winners have to do?
Well, we strongly believe that it's all about the shopper experience. And from that view, we believe that what we see online should be transferred to offline, which means that, merchants, which also, by the way, is interesting that 33% of Germans want to be loyal to merchants that are close by. So in the end, all these components on how do I make sure I drive loyalty, which could be something like card link loyalty, for example, which is, enabled by your credit card, for example. But also making sure that you can reach your shoppers across all channels in the same way, and then making sure it's really a frictionless one-click experience checkout. That is what we think shoppers want, and obviously from our view on what merchants want, it's always making sure that you drive up conversion. So those are really the things we focus on. Yeah.
I don't know whether you have a particular view on the different kind of retailers. My feeling is sometimes if it's sort of family-owned, entrepreneurial-driven business, they tend to move fast because they say, okay, we see there's a shift happening and we want to be part of this shift. While if you have sort of a network structure, which some of the bigger groups have, it can become very difficult because the people in charge of retail are not the same people that are in charge of e-commerce, and that causes all sort of problems. Do you also see that?
We see that a lot. I'm wondering how things are going to change that, because I think the last years have shown that we always had to talk to a number of stakeholders to make things move, especially in like very typical German companies. And there was like the CTO who wanted to get things going, and then there's the point of sale head of sales who doesn't like it. So I think for now we are hoping that there's a more of a holistic view from those merchants towards the future, and that they understand they need to move, because otherwise they're just, they're just going to be left behind in the end. I think that's something to we hope this crisis has given us this opportunity that people actually start thinking more into that direction.
Yeah, very much agree. Tarek, what's view on that? One thing that interests me is, of course, about you. Where do you see it going, and how will you react to the bigger market? And is there going to be sort of a consolidation in the market, or is there more room to grow for everybody? But before we get into that, I'd be curious to get your view on retail versus e-commerce, because it might be a little different from Adyen's.
I mean, I think, offline retail will always exist, but I think the share of online penetration would obviously increase. I mean, that even without Corona, that would have happened. You just need to look on the behavior of the young generation, Gen Z, Gen Y. They have an online penetration of roughly 50%, and the total online penetration is much lower at early, 10-ish% if you look on European online penetration. And it's quite obvious that this gap will be closed. Yeah. Nevertheless, I think we will never see an 100% online penetration, obviously, but maybe in, 20, 30 years, we will be at 50-50 or whatever, I think the important message is online will grow, and it will significantly grow. And I think, an offline retailer needs to think about, what is my part in this new kind of world in question marks, whether it's I'm a supplier for the existing platform, so you could run a marketplace model with Amazon or About You. You can connect yourself, and sell over About You because we have the end consumer access, or you could try to build up your own end consumer access, or you can do both basically. But at least, obviously, you need to have a strategy in place. And I see a lot of offliners having no strategy in place, and still believing that their position, can be defended in a pure offline world, and I don't think that holds true actually. And I think you can develop a lot of advantages by having offline stores, such as basically I see offline stores also as basically city warehouses. So there are advantages offline retailers have versus online retailers, but most of the offline retailers are actually not taking advantage of the assets they have basically due to their offline store network. Mm-hmm. What is the future for About You? I mean, we still want to grow further. Our vision is to become the #1 online fashion player in the world. We are expanding in categories. We started to sell secondhand, for example, unlike Vinted, not in a C2C model, but in a C2B2C model. So this is just one of the initiatives we take to basically increase the share of wallet within our customers. It's also going to other categories like sports, kids, premium, beauty. There is a lot of potential to increase share of wallet. We will further grow geographically. We'll further invest in technology. We are also having a B2B segment where we license out our technology. And in total, I believe we will become much larger. And to the question whether this is a market where there's room for everybody, I don't think so. Online markets tend to go into monopoles or at best oligopoles. Mm-hmm. That is how the global digital structure is, built in terms of search, social networks, etc. Clearly, they tend to monopoles. I believe in e-commerce, when it comes to e-commerce segments where it's purely about price, quality, so consumer goods segments, it's going to be a monopoly as well, and I think Amazon will win it. I think you don't need to be a huge prophet to prognose that. But in terms of fashion, where a lot of factors come into play, I don't think that this will end up in a monopoly. And for sure, if it's a monopoly, it will not be won by Amazon, because Amazon is already today not the largest online fashion retailer, and they are growing much slower than us and Zalando, for example. So I rather think this is going to be an oligopoly of now around 3 to 5 major players in the world, having at least 70-80% of the online market share. Today, the 3 largest online fashion players, being ASOS, Zalando, and us, are not even having 15% of the online fashion market share. So as you can see, online fashion today is a very fragmented market, and I don't believe it will stay fragmented. I think there are a lot of online fashion players that are going to be insolvent, or that or that will lose the end consumer access and will become kind of part of the marketplaces Amazon, Zalando, ASOS, and us offer basically to them. And those 3, Amazon, Zalando, ASOS, and us, I think will be part of the oligopoly. Maybe ASOS, not sure about that, but for sure Zalando and us. Amazon will always play a role in fashion, but in a very different segment. And who knows who the others will be. I think aside Zalando and us, there are in the Western world, taking out China, not that many players being prepared for global scale. There's one player in the United States being Revolve, but much smaller. That Revolve is just a fraction of our size. So who knows who the others will be, but I'm pretty sure that Zalando and us are going to make the race to become one of the very significant and high valued online fashion players in the world.
I tend to agree. Platforms, and you're right, of course, that platforms have a tendency of having one winner or 2 or 3 winners tops. I hope that a lot of the e-commerce markets will stay a little more lively than that. A, because we're a price comparison site, it would be really sad if that weren't the case, and B, also for the consumer, because usually choice is better. We have 55 seconds left, so really quick, Alex and Thomas, Tarek has already given us sort of the vision for About You. How has Corona shaped maybe if it's not a vision, then the goal for your company for the next years? 20 seconds for you, Alexa.
Well, we keep doing what we've been doing. We do enterprise e-commerce, mid-market, and platforms mainly, and we feel that there still is a lot to win, and now is a big chance in Germany to make sure that we support all those merchants who really want to get going.
Perfect. Thank you. Thomas, the last word is for you.
We think that it actually becomes possible to make our vision a reality, and that for consumers in a few years from now, first choice will be secondhand instead of new. So we think that that roadmap to our vision has been accelerated.
Perfect. Thanks a lot to the three of you. It's been a pleasure and great fun, and I hope everybody enjoyed our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.